Hey everyone, welcome back to 8A Certification Federal Buyer Set-Aside Training Part 2. This is Part 2 of 3 parts from training from our class on July 19th. And in this video, I want to talk to you about how set-asides help you win. I'm Michelle Brown with Federal Certifications and Training Programs through FedBiz Now and FedBiz Exchange. So here's what we're doing in video part 2 of Federal Buyers Training for 8A. So first we're going to talk about how small businesses have a space carved out just for them in the federal contracting arena. It's very important that you understand that. This helps your confidence, believe it or not. It helps you a lot to understand that you don't have to worry about competing with the big guys. Not only that, the set-asides make it possible for you to only compete with companies that are similar to yours. Now, sometimes are you competing with a company that may have more resources than you? Absolutely. But what you will find after I teach you how to do your research is that you don't have much competition at all. I mean, your competition could be 2 other firms, it could be 1 other firm, it could just be you. So I really want to help you to understand how the government has set up a level playing field so that you don't have to be intimidated by this entire process. Is there a lot to learn? Of course, but if you know and understand that you can compete in a way that you have more than a 50% chance of winning, I think you want to know how to do that. So that's what this is all about, to help you understand your power. 2, how set-asides actually work to help you win, what federal buyers must do. So that's what we're going to talk about in video 2. So federal contracting spending. Every single year, I talked to you about this before, there's $400 billion spent on government contracts. Now, the country spends a whole lot more than that. I'm talking trillions. But when it comes to buying products and services, generally speaking, it's always right around $4 billion or a little bit more. Never a little bit less, but always a little bit more. And I want you to remember that because that doesn't change. The government buys everything every single year. So once you get this right, you should continue to do this, not just because you're in the 8A program or because you have a GSA schedule. You should be looking at this as something that you can do on a long-term basis. If you ever decided to sell your company and you have government contracts, that increases the value of your company, or it could, depending on how many contracts you have, because you can have contracts that go over a 5-year period or a 2-year period. But the fact of the matter is, you know, it's a little different than the commercial side. So keep that in mind. This is a long-term game. But with that $400 billion, we're taking $308 billion approximately and carving that out over for the big guys. This is just the way it's set up right now. I wish we had more than the 23%, but you know, we barely even get to the 23% of the 400 billion. So the large companies get approximately 300 billion every year when it comes to government contracts, and small businesses get about 92 billion every year, sometimes more. As a matter of fact, in 2017, I believe I showed you all of the numbers for total small businesses, which said that we did about 95 billion. Of course, 8As did, you know, much less than that. You know, 8As did about, I think it was 21 billion, a little over 21 billion. But the fact of the matter is $92 billion is what is set aside for small businesses, all small businesses together. So that 23% is serious. It's not just a number randomly picked. It means all of the federal agencies, and I'm going to give you some examples. All of these federal agencies like the Department of Interior, the Department of Agriculture, Department of Defense and all of their sub-agencies, Department of Justice, Homeland Security, Health and Human Services. This is just to name a few. Every last one of these agencies, including their sub-agencies, their baby agencies, must help to meet this 23% goal. So that means that they are required to put aside, take some contracts and put them aside for small businesses only. There are some other rules in place. They don't just randomly pick them, but there is some methodology to them picking them. But the fact of the matter is, if you don't go out there and get that money, the larger companies will. So 23% of whatever the entire budget is for contracting dollars. This is only contracting dollars. This is not grant programs and all of that. Contracting dollars only must go to small businesses. And when I teach you how to use the system to run your reports and conduct your due diligence, you will see that there are hundreds and hundreds of contracting agencies that can buy from the small business community. That's how they meet the 23%. The SBA has a cooperative agreement with these agencies to make sure that those goals are being met. And they have a specific operating agreement or contracting agreement with these agencies for 8A. That's how they are able to call up or pick up the phone, like I told you your BOS can do, or your district director. They can send out search letters because all of these agencies know the 8A program is a business development program, and they are not surprised when your district office or someone from your district office picks up the phone and says, hey, we have a few firms over here that we believe can do some of your jobs. And that's why I don't understand what the problem is, because all they have to do is make contact and say, I have 8A firms over here that can do the work that you need done under these 3 or 4 contracts. So federal agency small business goals. They all have them. Every agency must do business with women, disadvantaged businesses, 8As, veterans, and small businesses in general. Every agency is required to report their results every single year. If I wanted to, I could go to, for instance, the Department of Energy and look at their goals for 2017 to see how they did last fiscal year. I can look at their report for women, for minorities, for 8As, for veterans, and for HubZone. And they don't have GSA schedules under there, but they categorize those under, generally speaking, under total small business, because a lot of the GSA schedules are for small businesses. And every last one of them has a website. Don't go and look at their big website when I say do your homework. I'm talking about if you need to go to a website for an agency that you've decided to target, make sure you Google small business agency. So if you're looking at the Department of Justice, put in Department of Justice small business website. It makes a difference. You can find everything you need to do business with the Department of Justice on the small business website, and every agency has one. Every federal agency with a contracting budget has small business specialists also. So those small business specialists, they are only there to help you. So don't feel like you're inconveniencing them or like you're getting on their nerves. Make them do their work. Now, I do always remind you to understand what you can get out of certain people. You know, I mean, you have to know how to work with certain types of people. Small business specialists, you can ask them for forecasts, you can ask them about set-asides. Now, it's not their jobs per se to make sure that the contracting officer sets aside, but they can talk to the contracting officer about opportunities for certain groups, certain small business groups. They can ask the questions. They can be your representative, which is what they're supposed to be. Do they always do a good job at that? Not all the time, but I just want you to know that's their job. The only reason they're there is because of you. They're there to protect you and your interest. Federal agency small business set aside goals. The SBA is there to help these agencies meet their business goals. So the SBA knows that the agencies working together and individually will accomplish this 23%. And there's basically a system set up to support this process. So you have 7% of the 23% goes to total small businesses, meaning 7% of the 23% must be contracts that were awarded to total small businesses. Those are businesses with no additional certifications. 5% must go to women. And sometimes you can be in a situation where you're a woman and you, of course, are a regular small business. The contracting officer can take credit for both. The fact that you are a woman-owned business, but you're also a small business. So women-owned businesses get 5%. Service-disabled veterans get 3%. Small disadvantaged businesses, which includes 8A total, gets 5%. And then 3% is the hub zone category. So if you add all of those up, they equal 23%. And that is what all of the agencies, along with the SBA, this is what they work together to accomplish this 23%. So set-asides connect 8As to and certifications to make the process work, meaning the whole idea of the 8A is to say we have this group of small businesses that we've taken and put them into a program because we believe through the qualification process that they're ready to go to a next level. However, we're still going to develop them through this program. That's why it's called 8ABD, Business Development. And I've heard some people in the SBA say, well, that's not what we do. We're not here to develop you. And that is so not true because that's what the program says in the regulations. That's what it is. It's a business development program. So everything that they do is to help you grow your company. It's supposed to be. But we've talked about that so you understand. Get what you can get out of those folks, and then you will take care of yourself and do the best that you can to get yourself to the next level, yourself and your firm. But set-asides are a major part of the 8A process. So certifications are the SBA's way of leveling the playing field. And the 8A program, because it involves disadvantaged people, is even more so. That's why they give you a representative, because these representatives, like your BOS and the district office, they're supposed to be basically guiding you and protecting you through this process. So they're designed to help small businesses become primes. All of the certifications are, but the 8A program is really designed for that. It's supposed to accelerate you over the next 9 years while you're in the program. And the system ensures that regular small businesses, women-owned, disadvantaged, and that all of the groups are treated equally based on this 23% and the set-asides. Everything is about the set-asides. And to be honest with you, the set-asides work the same way for all of the groups. The only difference with 8A is that your BOS, you have a person that is there supposed to be there to help you progress through this whole journey. That's the only difference. But, and there's one more difference. The other difference too is that with the 8A, your BOS can ask specifically for a contracting officer or an agency to set aside an opportunity and give it to a specific firm, whereas you might not have to go through the full process. That's why you hear about some of the companies getting sole source situations. Now, sole source situations, generally speaking, work on a competitive basis, meaning they're the only ones that bid on it, and so they won. Nobody else, there are no other sources that can do what that one company can do. But I told you in the live session that the government does not like sole sources. So if they can find someone to compete with you, they will. And the reason they don't like sole sources is because would you only want to have one customer? or one company that you could buy something from, it's not good business. It also makes you very vulnerable. The DLA has more than 6,000 items that they want small businesses to make or get involved with, providing different sources, because they have to depend on some of these large companies that are gouging. They're gouging the situation. They're raising the prices, and they're the only ones that offer this item. Nobody likes to be in a situation like that. Plus, it is the obligation of the federal government to spend taxpayer money cost effectively. They're not supposed to just be throwing it out there. They can't go and just, if they need coffee, buy Starbucks every day. Is Starbucks cost effective? Probably not. Can you get a bag of beans or coffee for an agency for less than $10? Yeah, of course you can. You can go to a grocery store or order it from a manufacturing company and probably get a pound of coffee beans for, let's say, $3, maybe even less. But, of course, Starbucks has the markup, and that may not be the best example, but the point is that even though they're doing these set-asides, they still, and the sole sources, they still want to get the best pricing because they're spending taxpayers' money. And you hear conversations about that on the news all the time, about how taxpayer money is being spent. But the goal of set-asides is to separate you, put you in a group, and allow you to compete with your peers and make the playing field level, so you don't feel like you're competing with, you're an aerospace company and you have to compete with Boeing. Why should you have to compete with Boeing? There's no way you would ever win unless you produce something or make something that Boeing doesn't make and the government needs it. And that happens, but it doesn't happen a lot. So we can't take that chance. So there's a reason why we have these set-asides. And contracting officers in every category, they understand that they need to meet or help meet these goals. They need to work with women, they need to work with 8As, they need to work with veterans. So they do have a lot of pressure on them, but they understand that's what they have to do. Sometimes they don't do a great job of it, so that's why we have PCRs. PCRs are procurement center representatives that represent you. They make sure that small businesses are getting their share of the contracts, that 23%. They're like the watchdogs. And, can you talk to them? Sure you can. I haven't talked a lot about them, but if you listen to some of my other videos, you will know what they do. And they actually are some very powerful people. They don't act like it, but they can do a lot. And they actually have the ear of the chief executive officers, the procurement chiefs. They can create a lot of havoc for contracting officers that are not setting aside the way they're supposed to be. I call PCRs all the time, or at least when I need to. So keep that in mind. All of these contracting officers understand that they have to help the agency meet these goals, so they know what to do. And when they don't know what to do, there are folks around them reminding them of what to do. Now, how do contracts get set aside? Well, they get set aside just like it sounds. Set aside contracts mean federal buyers, which would be the contracting officers, take contracts and literally set them aside. They look at the size of them if they're under $4 million. And we already talked about how if they're under $300,000 in the live class, if they're under $300,000, they are definitely required to set those aside for small businesses. And they can decide which group they want to bid on those contracts. So they can decide if they want it to be a woman-owned business to be awarded that type of contract, or a veteran, or an 8A, or a GSA schedule. They can decide those types of things. But there are actual procurement meetings that happen when they get their budgets. And the PCRs, procurement center representatives, participate in those procurement meetings where they decide what they're going to do with their budgets, how they're going to spend their money. And if a PCR does not hear or see enough activity when it comes to set asides for the contracts, it's a little more systematic than I'm talking about, but there is a system, there are controls in place, and anything under $4 million for products and services and anything under $6 million for manufacturing is carefully monitored to make sure that small businesses are getting their share. And contracting officers must abide by this law. It's a federal regulation. This is not something they can choose to do or choose not to do. And so when contracts are set aside, only that specific group can bid. So if this is a contract for women, only women-owned small businesses can bid on that contract. If it's for veterans, only veterans can bid. So this is a huge advantage because it limits your competition even more. So total small business is the largest category. So you can get all different types of businesses to bid on an opportunity under total small business. But if it's a woman-owned business, a WOSB set aside, it makes it even smaller. So with total small business, you might have, let's say, and this is just approximately because it depends on the industry too, but you might have with total small business, maybe the highest level of competition for you in your industry might be 8, maybe it's 5. But with a woman-owned small business and there's a competition, it's set aside because there's a competition, you might only see 2, maybe 3. That's how it is. Because the more certifications you have, and if the set aside is for a specific certification, it takes you to another level. Actually, the level is up, and I'll show you what I mean by that. So you could literally bid on a contract that has been set aside and have very, very little competition. You could also be the only competitor in that competition. So it could just be you. You may be the only one that bid on the opportunity. Set-asides are not optional for the buyers. They must set aside to meet agency goals. This is the only way that the goals are going to be met. And like I said, I make it sound, a little bit simpler than it is, but there are some very serious rules and guidelines to protect small businesses. How federal buyers are required to work with small businesses. So the Small Business Jobs Act, I mentioned that during the recovery when we needed to create more jobs. That administration, the past administration, which would be the Obama administration, put in place a lot of things like payments, like set-asides, more set-asides for small businesses when it comes to $300,000 contracts and lower. All of those types of things came about when we were in trouble back in 2008 and 2010. They needed to create jobs. We were losing more than 800,000 jobs a month, not a year, a month. We were in serious, serious trouble. We were losing homes. There were foreclosures everywhere. And so the administration needed to get the economy moving again. And that's when Congress approved the $750 billion bailout. They actually did too. But those dollars, that second set of dollars, went totally to the states to create jobs. And how did they create jobs? Well, they gave them all of these contracting dollars to create opportunities for small businesses. And therefore, that just meant that contracting officers, this is one of the things that they added, that contracting officers must consider small businesses before they even use the traditional small business set-aside program. So what that meant is WOSBs, hub zones, veterans, 8A, all of the certified businesses needed to come or be considered for an opportunity even before the regular total small businesses. So if you were a small business but you didn't have any additional certifications, you were in the second group for consideration, not the first group. And then contracting officers are supposed to conduct market research to find you guys. Now, is it part of the regulation that they're supposed to do this? Yes. Do they do it all the time? No. But it's because they have so much on their plates. This is why I'm teaching you to go and connect and find them. Don't sit around and wait for them to find you. Do they look for you? Sometimes. And do they find you? Yes, they do. But you need to be where they are, meaning you need to have their right codes, the same codes that they have, the same keywords, because when they go looking for you, they're going to make sure that you have the codes that they have. That's the only way they know to find you, even if their codes are wrong. Contracting officers must also consider historical data. That's with pricing. I just talked about that with the Starbucks coffee. They can't buy Starbucks coffee when someone is offering them direct manufactured coffee. Same type of coffee, same exact type, but it's for a much cheaper and lower price. They have to consider those things. So you can add a little bit of profit in there, add your cost on top of the pricing, but just be careful. Make sure that it's not overboard. But I will say this, the contracting officers by law, this same Small Business Jobs Act law, they can actually allow you to be a little bit higher just because one of the things that the Obama administration put into this law right here, the Small Business Jobs Act law, is that because you're small, you may not be able to give the types of discounts and pricing that larger companies can give. It's up to the contracting officer, but I can tell you, price does still matter. So do the best you can to make things cost efficient and to be competitive, but still make a profit. They also don't want you not making a profit because then you'll fail and they can't have you failing on a project. So here are the rules in black and white in a chart. Contracting rules contracting officers must follow. So if a procurement is between $3,000 and $150,000, they need to look at it this way. The only eligible companies would be small businesses, regular small businesses, and regular small businesses that are certified. That's the first group. The only time that a contracting officer can allow a large company to participate under full and open competition is if they cannot get any small businesses to bid on this contract between $3,000 and $150,000, which is not likely. If the certified businesses don't do it, then of course it'll drop into a small business's lap. Somebody's going to get it. But a lot of times if the small businesses don't go after it, the contracting officer has to pull it off the market and redo everything all over again and make it a full and open competition. And then you see all of the big businesses go in and bid on this. So you can have up to 1,000 bids. Aren't you glad that you don't have to be in that arena? Your arena, you might have 5 competitors, maybe 2. In their arena, they could have 600, 500, 200, 100. It's crazy. Next, you have to look at the category of 150,000 and 1 penny all the way up to 300,000. If the contract award falls in that category, small certified businesses must be considered first. If none of the small certified businesses go after this opportunity, if they don't bid on it, then he can pull it and turn it into a regular total small business set aside. Okay? And only if a regular set aside for small businesses, total small businesses, if they don't respond to the bid, then he can pull it and make it a full and open competition. That's where all the big companies come in. But most of the time, a small business will get it. But this is why you see some of the same businesses winning over and over and over again because they know what to do. When can contracting officers set aside contracts? A contracting officer can set aside a requirement for a contract for any group that he wants to do. He can set it aside for 8 days, and sometimes it is based on the direction of his agency. Maybe they're not doing so well with EWOSBs, and they might decide that they want to find more opportunities for economically disadvantaged women-owned businesses. It could be something like that, but he or she can do basically whatever they think they should. And if the PCR that manages and works with that agency does not think that that's a good idea because, or they don't have a subcontracting plan to go with that big opportunity that is for large primes, the PCR can stop that whole process and ask them to consider some other things to include small businesses. But the contracting officer in general can set aside anytime he or she wants to. And most of the time, they will do it if they see at least 2 or more small businesses submitting offers. Now, that used to be a hard, fast rule. It's not that way anymore. They don't have to always see 2. I've seen it where one person has bid, one small business has bid, and they won. So it doesn't have to be that way, but they will say that. That is why when people see sole sources out there, they might see a sole source on FBO.gov. Small businesses that understand what I said sole source, excuse me, I mean a sources sought. When people see a sources sought out there on FBO.gov, a lot of times they will have 2 companies. They'll call one of their peers or somebody that they know that's in the industry that might be interested in that same opportunity, and they both bid on it, meaning they both respond to it. Because a sources sought is like a request for information, and they both will submit their information. The reason they do that is because they're trying to help maintain that opportunity as a small business. All the contracting officer is trying to do is figure out, should I keep this as a total small business opportunity? And if he doesn't see that any small businesses respond to that RFQ or that sources sought, he's going to say, I don't think that there are any small businesses out there that can do this, so I'm going to make this a full and open competition. And some might say, well, why doesn't he just make it a small business anyway? Because you have to remember, the job of the contracting officer or the federal buyer is to buy things. There are people waiting on these items. So he or she can't mess around for more than 90 days trying to decide, okay, is there a small business that's going to bid on this? I need this item like within 90 days or less. So his job is to buy things. Her job is to buy things. So they need to know if we're going to be responsive. However, the contracting officer can set aside contracts with only one offer. It does happen. And it mostly happens with women-owned businesses, women-owned small businesses, especially if they are substantially underrepresented, meaning they can look at the WOSB program and see that women are not getting opportunities in specific areas. Those areas have been highlighted in the WOSB program to say, if you are a contracting officer and you see that there is one woman, any women, bidding on this opportunity in this area under these codes, go ahead and make an exception. But they can make the exception anyway. They can still choose only or take only one offer. I know that it happens. I know people that it's happened to. Well, heck, it actually happened to us, kind of. I mean, we followed up on it, but I know that it does happen. It doesn't always have to be 2 offers. And then the anticipated award price cannot exceed $4 million. I've already talked to you about that. $4 million for products and services and $6 million for manufacturing under federally certified programs. So that would be all of the certification programs. So that would be 8A, WOSB, EDWOSB, Service Disabled Veterans, and HubZone. Okay, so now that doesn't mean you can only get one $4 million contract. You can have multiple $4 million contracts. That's how you get some of your 8A companies that are within their 5th year, they're at 16 million in revenue, or 20 million, or 30 million, because they have more than one contract that may be worth 4 million with some extended periods, which might make it worth 7 million. And then the offer that is submitted must be fair and reasonable. That's what they live by, is fair and reasonable pricing. So in the case of the WSB program, so if you're in 8A, make sure that if you're getting a set aside with a contracting officer, because they don't always know how to do this, make sure that it is one of your NAICS codes under the WOSB program. With that said, thank you for joining me today. This is part 2 of 3, and I will see you in the next video, part 3 of 3. Leave me your comments, go ahead and subscribe, and let me know if you have any questions.